Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going over all the new combos and synergies from the last couple days of Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy cards. We got one more day tomorrow, but let's just go over what we got today and some infinite combos, some sweet new equipment here, and some new summon cards. Starting off with Summon Brinhilder, I believe. 2 mana for a 2/2, or for a 2/1, excuse me, with three modes here, three saga chapters, and the first one is exile a top card of your library. During any turn, you put a lore counter on this saga. You can play that card. And then 2 and 3 are whenever you cast a creature spell this turn, it gains haste until end of turn. So on the base rate, it's 2 mana for a 2/1. It is an enchantment, and it is a knight, which could be relevant, but not a great stat line here, and only lasts a couple turns. You can say play it on turn 2, turn 3, you can attack with it, and then turn 4, it goes away. So you're really just evaluating it mostly on this ability, because it's not the best creature for attacking or blocking, but it does kind of replace itself with the first ability here, so that's useful. And then it says you can any turn you put a lore counter on it. Excuse me. So the turn that you play this, or turn say 3 or 4, you could also play that card. So basically, draws you a card, which is nice to replace itself if you have enough cards that you can easily play. If they do kill it right away, then you can't play it, but that is still a 1-for-1 if they use a removal spell on it. So not the worst effect here. But then, really, I think you want to take advantage of this mode to give things haste. So what do you want to give haste in standard? Well, Radabon is pretty nice because when it attacks, you attach an equipment to it. So if you had an equipment on turn 1, play this on turn 2, and this on 3, you could equip it right away, like a Colossus Hammer, something like that. Could be interesting. If you have the Cipher here, for this is a 4 mana for the 3/4 that gives the creature double strike when it attacks, and then when it hits the opponent, you get to cast something from your graveyard for free if it costs 3 or less, instant or sorcery. So that you really want to give haste because it can give itself double strike, um, and get in right away and maybe trigger its ability. So giving that haste could be good if you play this on turn 2. You could a 3-drop, for example, the Unstoppable Slasher, and then this on turn 4. Both of those would have haste, so that's not bad to kind of set up your next couple turns. Speaking of Unstoppable Slasher, that would be pretty good to give haste just to get in and for a big chunk of damage, or the infamous Cruel Claw I was thinking about could be nice when it hits the opponent. You exile a card from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card, and then you can cast it for free, essentially by discarding a card. So let me know in the comments below any other cards that you would kind of want to follow this up with. It is a enchantment creature, which could matter for like delirium purposes too. So maybe it goes in sort of a delirium style deck. But I really wanted to kind of take advantage of the haste ability here and see what other creatures we have, because it is a decent card. If you say you play it on turn 2, and then the top card of your library is a land, it can help you hit your land drops. Or if it's a creature that you want to give haste to, it kind of fuels itself. So not bad. I'm not sure if this will see play or not. It is cheap and can do some powerful stuff. So, but really, I think you have to build your deck around this ability to make it decent. All right, let's move on to another summon here, another red summon as well, which is the 4 mana 3/3 Saga Dog summon GF. I believe it stands for Guardian Force, not Girlfriend. Cerebus. Um, so first loyal counter is just to surveil 1, and then second one doubles when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, you copy it, and then triple is when you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, you copy it twice. So again, the stats here are not great, just like in the last card. 4 mana for 3/3, pretty bad. Hill Giant stats. Being able to surveil 1, it does give you some value, I guess, if if you just play this and then it dies. Um, but then if this thing does live, it is quite powerful in what it's doing. Being able to double and then triple spells the next couple turns is both powerful effects. I mean, you're kind of getting your card back here, and then you're getting 2 additional cards here. Maybe you're getting an attack on turn 2, and you're getting a surveil. So you're definitely getting a decent amount of value for this thing if it lives. There's some interesting shenanigans you can do with this card, though, with Proliferate. I was thinking that was that would probably be the way to use this. If you play it on 4 and then the next turn you have the double up, if you play anything that has proliferate, for example, Volt Charge, you'll get this copied, right? So then you can do essentially 3 damage, and then 3 damage to something else, so like 6 damage to your opponent's face or kill 2 of their creatures. But it also has proliferate, so then you get to the next chapter, you can add a counter and proliferate anything else that's on your board as well twice, because you get 2 Volt Charges. This will die, but then this will trigger, and then the next spell you cast could be copied twice. So if you cast another Volt Charge, you get even more proliferates, or an Augury to get more proliferates. Say if you had a Boros Charm, though, like if you play this on 4 and then it survives, right? Turn 5, you get the double effect, Volt Charge for 6 damage to the face, goes to the triple, and then Boros Charm 3 times, which would be 12 damage, which would be just a lot of burn damage all at once to the opponent's face. Could be pretty powerful. So I don't know, something to think about in terms of a burn deck. Maybe these effects are quite good, but also a proliferate effect. If you are like proliferating twice, this say you went an experimental augury on the first one, proliferate into the next one, play another experimental augury or Volt Charge. That's 5 instances of proliferate, which could be quite good if you have anything that has counters on it. You're adding 5 additional counters, even planeswalkers like Liliana. You could get up to the ultimate of Liliana potentially if you had that on turn 3 and this on turn 4. And then you just proliferate 5 times. You put 5 more counters on Liliana than ultimate. I don't know, something like that could be powerful. So I think this card, it definitely has a powerful effect. May not see play again just because when you first play it, they just kill it with a Doomblade or whatever. Go for the throat, not that great. But if it does survive, it can do some powerful stuff, especially with Proliferate. Okay, let's move on to the Wandering Minstrel, which is a 2-mana 1/3 here. Legendary Human Bard, lands you control enter untapped. Powerful effect right away. And it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 5 or more towns, you create a 2/2 elemental that's all colors. And then this is a total of 1 of each, so 5, 8 mana, and other creatures you control get +X, where X is the number of towns you control. So pretty expensive ability, but the town deck looks kind of decent. We actually got a decent amount of support for it with this card, and also with Travel the Overworld. This card seems very powerful to me. 7 mana, but to draw 4, but it says affinity for town. So if you have 5 towns out, it's 2 mana to draw 4, which is an insane rate. It doesn't seem too hard to get that many towns in play, especially with Reach the Horizon, because you can search for 2 towns. They have to be different names, but there are other towns that have blue and they can tap for blue. So you could just get 2 blue towns and then play Travel the Overworld for very cheap. This would get you up to 5 towns, assuming most of the lands in your decks, most of the land in your deck are towns. um, it does put them onto the battlefield tapped. However, with the Wandering Minstrel, they become untapped. So imagine this kind of play of playing this on turn 2, turn 4, you play Reach the Horizons, get 2 towns, they're untapped. Now you have 5 towns, and then you play Travel to Overworld, draw 4 cards. So you're up to 6 mana, draw 4 additional cards, and then you're up to 5 towns, and you create a 2/2, and then you can use this ability by ramping up to this. So these cards just all seem to synergize. You can search up the Balam here, which also transforms cheaply for each town you have. You've got Town Greeter, which could be an early play in this deck just to gain you some life. Search for the towns that you need. So I don't know. Seems like this deck could be actually decent with these combination of cards. There are some other cards, Spelunking, I'm thinking of, that makes lands come into play untapped. So um, overall, we'll see. It seems like a decent strategy. It doesn't seem that bad and constructed to potentially play all towns and all town payoffs. But and just kind of go for like a ramp kind of style deck. Maybe play some big green finishers or something like that to win the game. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this town strategy. If it could potentially have some legs in standard. Okay, let's go to Excalibur the second. So we got a bunch of interesting equipment to go over. This is a 1 mana rare legendary equipment. And it says when you gain life, you put a charge counter on it, and then equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on it, and equipped for 3. So this kind of is good in so the Soul Sisters kind of life gain strategies, and you kind of want to have a bunch of instances of life gain, just like small life gain. So things like the Sanctifier is pretty good every time a creature enters. There's even a town land that gives you 2 life. So if you played this on 1 and then the town land on 2, that would add another counter to it. Anything with lifelink is pretty nice. That can give you more instances of gaining life. Especially the new Edelbert Steiner is nice because this gets pumped for having an equipment. Oh, it starts as a 2/1. Sorry, the town is covering up the power and toughness, but it starts at 2/1. So if you play this on 1, then this would be a 3/2 um, with lifelink. And then if you gained any life, get counters on this, equip it, gain even more life. Keep triggering this ability and keep pumping your Steiner and kind of grow it out of control potentially. So there's some interesting synergy there. Just a 1 mana investment and just kind of sits on the board and can get a bunch of charge counters on it and then give something bunch of power and toughness. Could be decent. The stats aren't terrible here. And better that it's cost 1, I think, just to get it out on the board early in the game if you're starting to gain a bunch of life. And again, there's a lots of like Soul Sisters type of style cards that can give you a bunch of triggers, and then maybe you equip it to one of these sort of like this 1/2 and make it at like a 10/10 or something in attack. So seems decent. Something to at least consider for the life gain decks. There's also some sort of there is an infinite. This is a very janky infinite combo with any card that kind of puts a counter on it when you gain life. If you have all will be one, which says it does damage every time a counter is put on a permanent, and then you animate it with Zur here that turns it into a creature with lifelink, um, hexproof, death touch. You could pay the ability here to turn it into a creature, and then so you have the Excalibur just on the board. Um, then all will be one attacks as a 5/5, right? Hits them for 5 or does 5 damage. You gain 5 life, but then that will trigger the Excalibur to put a counter on it, which then triggers all will be one to do a damage to something, but it has lifelink. So you gain a life, and then triggers Excalibur, and a counter is put on it. So then it triggers all will be one. It goes infinite, basically, if you animate this and make it into a lifelink creature. Um, so that's kind of interesting. It is 4 colors and kind of expensive, but this is sort of the cheapest way that I think exists now. There's like a Johnny's Pride Mate and things like that that you could play. Also, kind of harder to kill because it's not a creature; it's just an equipment that sits on the board. So I don't know if you're trying some jank infinite combo. There's one for you. All right, let's move on to another equipment, the Genji Glove, which is 5 mana for an equipped creature has double strike, and it says whenever equipped creature attacks, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap it. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. Equip is for 3. So this is pretty expensive in terms of the cost to cast and equip, but the effect is quite powerful, giving something double strike, and then it basically attacks twice. It only untaps the one creature, but it does give you additional combat phase. If you have anything like with vigilance or that untaps itself, that can attack again. But mostly just the creature that you are equipped with can attack again, but also double strike. So it's kind of like doing quad damage. So if you had like a 5/5 out, it would do like 20 damage potentially if it went unblocked, which is nothing to scoff at. But again, the casting cost is really the problem here, I think. The way to get around that, though, there are cards in standard that gets around the casting cost and equip cost of equipment. The Magmatic Snuffler can put it into play directly attached to it. Also, Dantha directly from your hand attached to it, giving it double strike in multiple combats would be pretty powerful. And One Last Job also can get it back from the graveyard and attach to a creature. So maybe there's some combo with some cards. There's a bunch of big equipment. We'll talk about another one that's decent as well, but maybe these cards can kind of sneak those big equipment onto them and go to town with them. So we'll see. Okay, next up we've got not another equipment. This is the Masamune, I believe. 3 mana for a legendary artifact equipment, and as long as equipped creature is attacking at its first strike and must be blocked. And then it also has if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of the creature or an emblem you own to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So in Final Fantasy, this is like Sephiroth's sword, I believe, um, and works just really well with Sephiroth because of his ability that it will double this ability whenever another creature dies. You get to drain your opponent for one, so you get two of those triggers, and then also his emblem on the backside, it would double that. His emblem is the same thing. It says whenever a creature dies, you drain, so it will double the emblem ability. But this can also work with other creatures that have abilities that trigger when something dies. For example, Massacre Girl is kind of cute with this, especially because if you give it first strike and it must be blocked, it has Wither, so it's pretty hard to block that kind of creature if it has Wither. Um, and actually, I'm not sure. It has Menace, so I wonder if it must be blocked. If they have two creatures, I guess they kind of have to double block it, I believe. But if they have one, then they can't. Maybe I'm not sure actually how that works. Just thought about that right now. But it also is interesting just because if they say they do have two creatures, they double block it, wither down one of them with the first striker attack, and kill it, and draw a card, and then trigger that ability again to draw an additional card with the creature dying. Um, so that's kind of interesting. Again, Elias Core also has a death trigger and also has death touch. Anything with death touch is quite good with this first ability here. Giving first strike and must be blocked. They'd have to block with a bunch of creatures in order to kill this. So it's kind of just like guaranteed killing one of their creatures every turn. Kind of hilarious with Anzarag too, because it must when it becomes blocked, you untap it and you get to attack again, and this must be blocked and has first strike. And Anzarag has Eat Power, so they're going to need a heck of a board to try to get through that. This basically will like mow down their entire all their creatures basically, um, most likely depending on the board state. But if you have this and you equip it to Anzarag, then they're basically must kill the Anzarag or answer it in some way. Otherwise, they just really can't keep a creature on the board. And you're guaranteed to kill all the creatures and then hit them for 8. So that's going to end the game pretty quickly. So kind of a cool, interesting combo. I don't know that really will make it in standard, but something to think about at least. All right, let's go on to what is this? Oh yes, Goal Bez, the Crystal Collector, which is 2 mana, a blue and a black mana for a legendary human wizard. 1/4 stats, and it says whenever an artifact you control enters, you surveil 1. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 more artifacts, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. So interesting effect here. Not a bad stats. 2 mana for 1/4 can block early in the game. Sometimes your opponent has Monstrous Rage, obviously it's not going to turn out too well, but it can sometimes block on the board. So not bad, and the abilities are interesting. So on level 1, you kind of want to just like play a bunch of artifacts to get this ability here, the surveil, so you can kind of thin through your deck or put other creatures into your graveyard, which will then help you out for the second ability and third ability, you might say. So things like Thran Spider puts 2 artifacts into play, and is a creature that you could return, or Tinker's Tote could put 3 triggers of this on the stack and also up your artifact count. There's some jank potential definitely here with like Yargle and Multani for the last ability, to just like dome them for 18. Maybe Collector's Vault can make a bunch of artifact tokens and like put your Yargle in the yard, something like that. But I don't know, something to consider. 8 is a lot of artifacts to have in play, but not impossible to do with, there are cards, again, that create multiple artifacts. Not an impossible task. And you could just play this kind of just for value to get things back from your graveyard to your hand. So I don't know. Seems like an interesting one, something I might try to brew around and see if we can pull off some jank combo with it. Okay, there also is some infinite combo potential with this card. The Scavenging Ooze and the Gold Keeper go infinite with this, in the sense that the Gold Keeper says whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard during your turn, you can create a treasure, and then Scavenging Ooze lets you exile a card from your graveyard. So if you have a card in your graveyard and you have all 3 of these out, You exile one of them, um, then you make a treasure, and that will then surveil, which will then you can put another card into your graveyard, and then you can use the treasure to pay for the scavenger use to exile that card that you put in the graveyard, create the treasure, gives you the surveil, puts another card in the yard. So you can kind of go infinite, so to speak. It doesn't really do anything in the sense that this doesn't kind of guarantee you win the game. It will kind of mill your entire deck and exile your entire deck, basically, if you wanted to do that. You could gain quite a lot of life if you have a bunch of creatures and make scavenging ooze into a huge creature, if most of your deck is creatures. So there is that. And then, if they have anything additional in play that like triggers whenever you sacrifice something, triggers whenever an artifact comes into play or leaves play, or triggers whenever something leaves your graveyard again. All of those would, basically kill your opponent if you had a fourth card. But this is kind of just something to consider. I played a deck that was, had this two combination with Scavenger's Talent on the channel a few weeks ago. If you want to check that out, but maybe another card that could be considered for that kind of strategy as well. Okay. And also has, I thought, some interesting potential here with Matoya, which is a 3-mana 1/4. It says whenever you scry or surveil, you draw a card. And this says whenever an artifact you control enters, you surveil one. So the two of these cards together, whenever you play an artifact, you basically get to surveil, or I should say, whenever an artifact comes into play, you get to surveil and draw a card. Which could then draw you into more artifacts, which you play and then surveil and draw. So if you have a bunch of just like really cheap 0-mana artifacts like Mox Amber, you fill your deck with those. Maybe there's some sort of combo potential here with the two of these cards. I'm not really sure. Just something I was thinking about. And maybe just like a value engine as well between the two of these cards. This seems quite good as well. But I don't know. We'll see. And let's see. We got this one. Sorry about the image quality. This was the best I could find for Venat, which is a 3-mana 3/3 legendary elder wizard, and it says whenever you cast a legendary spell, draw a card, and it only triggers once each turn. Boo! Although it would be way too good probably if it triggered more than once. And then 7-mana, tap it to exile a non-land permanent, and you transform it into a 4/4 indestructible god. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put +1/+1 counter another target creature, and until end of turn, that creature gains indestructible. If it's legendary, draw a card. So not a bad effect. If you get to 7 mana, you get to upgrade your guy, and then probably draw a bunch of more cards, buff all your other legendaries. So pretty powerful if you get to 7 mana. There are cards that kind of can help you add mana to activated abilities, so that's something to consider as well. But mostly, I think you want to play this card for its front side, just the legendary card drawing. And notice it just says there's legendary spell, not legendary creature, which is kind of interesting because we have things like Tiny Bones joins up, like the Mox as well, that are legendary and care about other legendary. So, maybe there's sort of some legendary um, creature matters deck, and this kind of triggers off of anything you play. If you play Annie joins up the next turn, you draw a card, which is kind of cool. And then it would trigger this ability, not when it's on the stack, but any additional time it triggers, it would actually trigger uh, that ability triggers an additional time. I think it does, although it does say it only triggers once each turn. I'm not actually sure how that works. I would figure it probably would work an additional time, but anyways, Annie joins up. It's pretty good in Legendary Matters decks. Ratadrobic also pretty good with Legendary Matters decks. Any legendary creature comes back, like such as this. If it died, it come back as a 2/2 copy of it, which would be nice. Or Hajar here can protect all your legendaries. So there's certainly a lot of support for Legendary Matters cards in Standard right now. Maybe it's more of a commander card, but not sure. Something to consider with deck building with this thing, and does kind of give you a lot of card advantage. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, and last up, I think we have one uncommon here, which I thought was pretty good. X Death Void Warlock, which is 3 mana for 3/3, and it is a Spirit Warlock legend. And when it enters, you gain 3 life, which is kind of nice. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 6 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, you transform it. Transforms into a Star 3 with trample as power is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. Interesting card for sure, and I think quite powerful. Um, Potentially standard playable. It reminds me of Souls of the Lost, which counts the number of permanent cards in your graveyard to determine its power and toughness here. The big difference, well, there's a couple big differences. This costs 2, obviously, versus 3. This one you'd have to sacrifice or discard a card. Don't have to do that with this. Gaining 3 life is kind of nice. Kind of boosts your life total, makes you potentially be able to set up for a turn 4 with this. Because ideally, you kind of play this on turn 3, and then it transforms right away, and then you just keep filling up your graveyard. And there are cards that do fill up your graveyard in standard that could get up to the 6 permanents if you filled your deck with permanents, like the Gnawing Vermin for 2. Town Greeter would mill 4. Overlord can mill 4. Town Greeter, you could chump block with either of those to put additional permanents in the graveyard. It's really nice that it doesn't just cast creatures, any permanents. So this thing can get really high power very quickly, kind of like Souls of the Lost does. But also the big difference here, I think, is that it has trample, which is huge. In the fact that, well, when the creature is huge or the power is huge, having trample really matters. They can't just chump block it, so you can do a ton of damage to your opponent. It does only have 3 toughness still, which means it could die to like any burn spell that does 3 damage. So something to consider for the downside of this. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if this could see play in a self mill, the kind of like black green self mill strategy. I mean, when you flip it over, it will have 6 power, and then say the following turn you mill an additional 4 cards, play another Town Greeter or something like that, or 3 cards with the Town Greeter. If you get a land, then its power is up to 10. Swing for 10. I mean, that's pretty decent, right? So I don't know. It seems like a pretty good card to me. At least it has some potential for this sort of green black self mill strategy in standard. So that is it for today. Again, tomorrow is our final day of Final Fantasy spoilers. I'll make a video if there's anything cool spoiled for that. And then I've got some top 10 lists of combos coming up. So stick to the channel for that. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking. Any cards that you're excited to brew around, anything I missed with these cards. Love to hear about the ideas for how you can brew some cool combos or decks that you're excited to play. And then, of course, when the set drops on Arena in, I think it's been about a week and a half or so, I will have gameplay footage for some combo decks and all the fun stuff going on the channel. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.